What is going on, everybody? Welcome into Alarm Fantasy Football. Hey, it's me again, Howard Bender. How are y'all here? We've tagged out John and Pemba and the Quick Outs podcast. We have tagged in Britt Flinn here on Alarm Fantasy Football. Britt, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm doing good. It's a happy Wednesday. No crazy severe vet bills, which is always great.
Oh.
I was a little nervous. I was like, what are they going to have to do? She almost headbutted the vet, but we escaped without injury. So all in all, the best eventful day that you can ask for.
Headbutting dogs is never a good thing. Actually, my wife, who brought me this yummy, delicious smoothie in the middle of the last show in this fabulous Fantasy Alarm pint glass.
Branding.
Got hit in the face. I got headbutted in the face by a dog. She was trying to help him into the car, and he jumped up and like, ba-boom, like his square noggin, like right there on the side of his. I was like, oh, well, congratulations. Now you know exactly what it feels like to get punched in the face. There you go.
I would actually wager that it hurts worse by a dog because their skulls are so flat. Like getting hit just covers so much more surface area when you get headbutted.
Right, but the dog's not intentionally doing it to you. So, as opposed to somebody who's like,
You've never tried to play keep away with Grizz with a Frisbee and it backfires in your face. So he might not be intentionally doing it, but there's some power behind that.
There's always power behind it, no doubt. All right, well, we thank everybody here for joining us at Alarm Fantasy Football. If you're watching us on YouTube, well, please hit that subscribe button, smash the like button too. This is how we do it here at Fantasy Alarm. We appreciate all of your support. You got comments you want to throw down in the chat? Do it up. Happy to chat with everybody out there. I already see that Chris Sellers fella. I don't know who that guy is, but
weirdo. He follows like everything.
Loyal watcher here. So some great stuff that we've got for today's show. We'll give you all the hype talk about the Fantasy Alarm NFL Draft Guide. That's being constantly updated. The cheat sheets out. We're doing our player debate series on Fantasy Alarm. That's starting up this week. So there's so much going on over there. Again, I urge you. I mean, unless you like losing, I would just go to fantasyalarm.com/draft guide and I would sign up for the All Pro subscription. Get the guide and the cheat sheet and hang out with me and Britt in Discord and hang out with, John and Pemba and Andrew Cooper and the whole gang over there in our Discord. You got to be a member to be in our Discord. So today we've got two polarizing things going on with players. We've got the overhyped, and then we've got buying the dip. So we've got players who we see right now. We're getting all of these training camp videos, watching, these uncoverable wide receivers and these insanely elusive running backs. And we're seeing all of these amazing throws by all of these QBs. So the question is who are we believing in? Who are we not believing in? So we're going to talk about the hype machine and what happens there. And then we're also going to talk about, listen, we know this running back situation is crazy, but ADPs are dropping for a number of players, and it's not just running back. So the question is, are we buying the dip? So that's going to be the bulk of what we're going to talk about today. But as always, here on Alarm Fantasy Football, we got to keep up with the Joneses and help you understand what the news is that you're seeing right now. So it's time for some breaking news with our correspondent, Britt Flinn.
Thank you, Howard. Just obviously need to throw that in the trash because that is too tempting as a microphone prop. But anyway.
That's great. I'm like, I got my water bottle right here. I got my Red Bull can right here too. Hello, Britt. What's happening?
Oh man, I'm just being goofy. There's been a lot. And you mentioned, the draft guide and always updating. The injuries have been absolutely insane. Trying to keep up with that injury guide. Who keeps being added to pup, taken off pup, who keeps suffering little minor things? Are they actually more major? And one of those that happened yesterday was Cooper Kupp. He's returning from that ankle injury last year, but it appears that he went out yesterday with a hamstring injury. He got an MRI today, but the Rams are unsure about a timetable for his return at this point in the broadcast. And so, with a soft tissue injury coming back from an ankle, he's going really high in drafts. And with his age and a soft tissue injury, they can tend to linger and come back off and on throughout the season. So, how do you feel about Cooper Kupp? Is that something that you're very concerned about, or just a little concerned?
I'd say, on my concern level, my worryometer is just kind of ticking it around like a 2.5 or a 3 for this. The passing game for the Rams still runs through Cooper Kupp. I mean, they don't have anybody else. Now, I'm not going to talk about Van Jefferson or Tyler Higbee. They're not going to throw a massive amount of passes out in the flat to Kyron Williams. It's Cooper Kupp, and it's nothing. And it's been Cooper Kupp and nothing else for a really long time right now, right? I mean, yeah, fine, in the Super Bowl year that you had Odell Beckham present, and that kind of helped things. But how many times, Britt, did you watch a Rams game at any point last year, and you were like, how the F does this guy get so open all the freaking time?
All the time.
All the
All
time.
the time. I think that I could make my own Cooper Kupp reaction audio. It would have to be obviously explicit lyrics, because it's always like, how the F is he there? Where the
Right?
F is everybody else, But that's what he does on the field. And so hopefully this MRI comes back as nothing more than just, a minor strain, nothing to be concerned about, because they're already in trouble with Kupp. Without him, it could be
Oh,
very, very bad.
keep him out. I'm fine. Keep him out of the preseason. Let him heal. It's like
Yes.
Joe Burrow, right? Does Joe Burrow need the preseason? No. Slap a walking boot on that guy. Tell him it doesn't come off for the next 3 to 4 weeks, and then we'll get you back into game shape, right? So same with Cooper Kupp. Wrap that sucker in a big ace bandage, keep it nice and tight, and then park his ass on the couch and make him just watch game film.
Yep, absolutely. I am in agreement with you there. Another guy who suffered an injury in practice yesterday, who could be a little bit more concerning than Cooper Kupp, was Alexander Madison. He did stay on the sideline throughout the rest of the practice, but then he went immediately to the locker room with a trainer. We don't have any details on it, unfortunately, so we can't really speculate what is going on. But with a running back room behind him that's only seen 28 total rushing attempts in the NFL, the depth is a little concerning. With as high as Madison's ADP is going, is that something that changes things for you?
I'm kind of out on Madison.
Me too. I have been.
I'm not into him. Right. I was looking at the sign up sheet for the player debate series, and I was like, damn, Alexander Madison, Britt took against. I don't want to go for. I think that the overall scheme that Kevin O'Connell runs in Minnesota now is a very pass heavy scheme. I mean, how could it not be when you've got assets like Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, Jordan Addison, even KJ Osborne, for that matter? You've got great receiving weapons here. He's just not, O'Connell's not a hardcore running guy. The problem also that they have with Minnesota is that the offensive line, at least the majority of the offensive line, was built by Gary Kubiak and Rick Dennison. And that's for a zone blocking scheme, for a lot of outside zone work. All right. So you've got pulling tackles and pulling guards. All right. And so those guys now, all of a sudden, when O'Connell came in, he was like, you know what? I want to keep some of the outside zone stuff there, but I want to do some power gap blocking. And for that, you need these like big Magumbo 350-pound offensive linemen that can just, like sumo wrestlers, and just boop, 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 knocking guys out of the way. And so your offensive line has like multiple identities. You don't know which way they're going to go. And I don't think that that power gap blocking scheme that they're going to be, that they have already blended in from last year, it doesn't suit Alexander Mattison. I think Mattison would have been much better in an outside zone scheme, and they just left it at that. So that's my issue right there with him in Minnesota. So the injury is almost irrelevant for me.
Yeah, the scheme is definitely a big point, but one of my earliest points of contention with Mattison being Minnesota's RB1 was his durability, because we haven't seen him. That sample size that we saw him fill in for Dalvin Cook was only 6 games, and now he's already getting hurt in practice. What's going to happen when he has to run through the middle, 20 times a game? I don't think that it's going to end up well, and where you're taking him in ADP is just, you might as well be lighting money on fire, in my opinion.
Small sample size. Chalk it up as yet another term that's being thrown around here in the offseason that's really giving me a complex.
It's the buzzword of the day, I feel.
Small sample size, right? You, me, and Kevin talking yesterday, that whole 6% Chubb exposure. And then you hit me on Twitter the other day. You're like, don't forget about how the sausage was made. I'm like,
yep. How could you forget
terrible.
that one? We're getting the phrases out of context are really bad. So let's just keep it moving here and get to some quarterbacks. I don't think there's a lot that you can say about quarterbacks that has innuendo unless it's quick release. So Tampa Bay OC Dave Canales says that the quarterback competition between Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask has, quote, absolutely tightened. If it is Kyle Trask over Mayfield, are you more worried about Godwin or Evans, or does that just barely move the needle?
I'm 100% worried about Mike Evans. We were talking to people yesterday. Shouted out to the Kangas man, who is a diehard Browns fan, who actually admitted and apologized to John Mpemba for defending Baker Mayfield for all of that time. So I think Mayfield, Trask, they're both terrible. Neither one of them excites me at all. It's going to be a run-heavy scheme. I think the passing will feature Chris Godwin a lot more. Yes, they'll take the occasional deep shots downfield. Every team does it. But Mike Evans is not getting thrown to by Tom Brady anymore, and that, to me, is a major issue. So I'm fine with Godwin, especially in a full-point PPR format. I don't love any of this passing game at all, and it starts with the fact that, this tightened up competition between Bunk Mayfield and Kyle Trash, as somebody aptly named him yesterday.
Yeah, it's not good out there. And I've heard a lot of people say, well, what if the Buccaneers are this year's Seahawks? They're not going to be. They're not going to be. They're not going to be. It was a miracle that it happened with the Seahawks last year, 2 years in a row. It is not going to happen. I'm with you. I think that Godwin gets the targets, but as far as those deep balls, and I don't think that there's any possibility. And then Mike Evans came out yesterday and said that he's the best player in football. So we'll see how bad that comes back to bite him this season. So there's another quarterback controversy brewing that I don't think that we really saw coming necessarily. But Bill Belichick, when asked if Mac Jones would be the QB1, said everyone out here is competing, which with Belichick, I feel might just be typical coach speak. But also what we saw from Bailey Zappi last year was really good. Belichick's also been managing Ramondre Stevenson's workload in camp. And when Stevenson was asked about it, why he wasn't taking all the reps, he said, you've got to ask Bill. So there's just so much discombobulation going on in this Patriots offense. Is this just typical coach speak and management, or do you think that there's something more to this story?
No, I think that this is just typical Bill Belichick being Bill Belichick. John Mpemba in the Quick Outs podcast made a really, really good point about Bill Belichick, bringing in these, all these running backs for a look, like bringing in Dalvin Cook. And it's not about him wanting to make a move right now. It's more about, well, if something does happen to Stevenson, I know which one of these guys understands our offense the best, and then he can make a more informed decision down the road. It's not something in the immediate. I think he's trying to motivate Mac Jones. Everybody knows, like, it's so funny. And I don't know if it's the football world or if it's the fantasy football world, but everybody clings to like a backup QB like Bailey Zappi, who came in, had some good stuff. You were like, oh, okay, great. That's awesome. Wow, Bailey Zappi really slinging the rock. So much fun to watch. Oh, is there a quarterback controversy going on there? I think Bill Belichick would be much happier with. I mean, listen, he brought in Bill O'Brien again, right? And because Bill O'Brien, running that offense in Alabama, that makes Mac Jones that much more comfortable. I don't think you're bringing in Bill O'Brien and have him install features that make Mac Jones more comfortable if you weren't planning on going with Mac Jones the whole way.
Yeah, I agree. And he's already got that rapport with Hunter Henry, who's apparently been excelling at camp. Why are you going to mess that up and switch out your quarterbacks? It doesn't make sense. Plus, there is way too much draft capital invested in Mac Jones to bench him at this point. So moving on to another player who won't be benched, but might not be there regardless. The Josh Jacobs holdout, the never ending saga that is running backs, right? So the Raiders said today that they are open to restarting talks with Josh Jacobs. How well do you think this goes? Do you think it's going to end up being a franchise tag number, or are they going to play hardball and kind of, do what the Giants did with Saquon and kind of come down from their original offer?
Well, I think they're going to do exactly what they did with Saquon, right? Saquon signed his $10.1 million franchise tender, and then they were like, oh, hey, man, here's a $2 million signing bonus. Now, I don't know how far apart the Raiders and Josh Jacobs were in contract talks, but the Giants and Saquon were like $2 million apart. So if Saquon and the Giants are $2 million apart, I can't imagine that the Raiders and Jacobs are going to be that much. So yeah, I think if they're saying we're open to having this conversation, well, light your Zamir White shares on fire in best ball now, people, because he's going to come. Jacobs going to sign. They're going to give him a signing bonus. He's not walking away from $10.1 million and sitting out for the season. I mean, unless he's like, Rosie Riveter or Norma Ray and is going to stand up for all running backs to be finally respected in the contract world. I think Josh Jacobs is going to be like, you know what, man, I'm going to take my $10 million. You guys sweeten it up a little bit for me, and I'm in camp and we're good to go.
Yeah, I think so too. With all the free agents still lurking in that waiver wire pool, it doesn't look good if he doesn't take this money, right? This money's sitting right in front of him. He has the opportunity to get paid as opposed to maybe sitting out for a full season and making nada. So I agree with you. I think that he signs back there. Going back to some injuries, Calvin Ridley gave us a scare yesterday with a toe injury. But hopefully they think that it was related to the cleats he was wearing and not an actual injury. He was limited in practice today, but from what highlights we saw, he seems to be just fine. We're going to talk about Ridley later, so I'm going to save the questions about him for then. Little spoiler alert.
Oh, you just want to make me all nervous talking about a toe injury? You were like, we'll talk later.
It's the psych out, building drama. That's what makes for a good show, right?
It's
building the drama.
It's the nod to Paul Rubens right there. You want psych?
I love it. I love it. So Melvin Gordon, in other running back news, issues a warning to other players considering the running back position, saying that he would switch positions in a heartbeat if he could do it over. Will the current state of the running back position in the NFL cause some problems in the future, or is this something that we're all going to look back on in a couple of years and be like, that was so stupid? Why did we spend so much time talking about this?
I mean, I think it hinges on whether or not ownership turns around and says, you know what, we want to make things right with the running backs. We understand what's going on. And listen, I'm sorry that your NFLPA representative was an outright buffoon, right? And you guys were so short-sighted about it, but we gave you what you wanted in 2011, and now you're coming crying. So if ownership wants to make things right, then I think that we'll work on some sort of a sliding scale payment system or something like that, on the overall sense. But I mean, Melvin Gordon. Like, can you imagine, like, everybody, every kid in the world growing up, every pee-wee football player, high school player, everybody stops, saying, "Oh, coach, I don't want to be a running back. I don't want to be like." Are we genuinely going to phase out the position altogether? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think
I don't
Melvin Gordon's an idiot.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to phase out the position, but if these kids are looking at what players are getting paid and don't think that there is a lucrative avenue, I mean, why not switch to the defense or something like that that still fits their body style and build, but you can get paid a whole bunch more. So there are still going to be people playing running back, but the overall quality might decline. That's what I'm more worried about than anything. Then, in a final piece of news, this isn't anything fantasy related, but it has to be talked about because it is so outrageous and ludicrous of a suggestion. Lions head coach Dan Campbell wants to have a real live freaking lion on the sidelines as their mascot. I get it. They're the kneecap biters, whatever you want to call them. But we want this to be figuratively biting kneecaps, not literally, Dan. Not literally. Why would you want a real life lion on the sidelines? And how could you suggest it to the point that you bring it up to your owner and to the NFL? This was not in jest. This was a serious suggestion. And it absolutely boggles my mind.
You know what's really funny here is that I remember Jim Bowden telling me a story that Marge Schott, the old owner for the Reds, who hired him as the GM over there, was so enamored with an elephant being like the Reds representative, like animal, that Jim walked into her office, like, giant, whatever, and there was like all these plans of having like a real live elephant there, and it was like it was mind-blowing. I'm gonna have to have him, because of this story. I'll have him tell that story on the Fantasy Alarm Show on Sirius XM. You guys can listen to that 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern. Quick plug. Yeah, I mean, listen, you're an animal lover, I'm an animal lover. This is cruelty to animals, where you're gonna keep a caged lion on the field, on the sidelines, where people are going by left and right, probably trying to snap pictures of it. The crowd erupting at a variety of different things. Like, I couldn't think of anything more cruel to do to an animal than that. And I'm actually surprised that, we aren't hearing more right now about like protesters at Lions camp protesting the fact that Dan Campbell is an absolute moron for even suggesting this. I put you in a cage on the sidelines there, Dan Campbell. See how you like it, my friend.
Well, I think there apparently was a precedent in the 80s. I believe that the Bengals had a tiger on, like, in the stadium as their mascot. But again, that was in the 80s. This is 2023, people.
Right.
What are we doing here? What are we doing?
How many times can we look back in history and say, because that's the way we always did it, how that doesn't work anymore, right? I mean, I'm sitting here talking to you, Britt. Like we're doing fantasy football analysis. If this were the 80s, right, where would you be? You'd be making dinner or something, right? I mean, it's like it's ridiculous. So just because the Bengals did it in the 80s does not mean that we do it here in 2023. It's just such a dumb idea. Put yourself in the animal's position. Please.
And Sellers does point out that the Razorbacks do have a live boar that they bring to games, but they don't bring him inside the stadium, for one. And that pig has a better life than most of us on this planet.
As long as he's not in the stadium, I think that's great. That's fine. You want to have a live mascot. Pig.
It's not an apex predator.
Right. If the boar gets loose, yes, you got watch your lower legs, but come on, man. A lion gets loose at the
Yeah.
stadium.
That's yeah. Anyway, we'll move on. It's too much for me. I can't.
Unbelievable. Well, people of Detroit, call your congressman, write to your senators or whatever. And just please don't do it. Don't do it. All right. Is that all the news we got?
So far, that is all the news. I haven't had anything break on my phone during that segment. So I think that we are. Oh, actually, there is Cooper Cup news.
Uh-oh. What is it?
Oh.
Uh-oh.
So, no, this is good news. So,
Okay.
from my understanding, Chiefs running back Isaiah Pacheco should be cleared for contact by August 20th. Hand is good. It's the shoulder that's left to be cleared. So, good news on that front for Pacheco.
Yay.
Yeah.
Pacheco. But nothing about Cooper Cup?
No, it was actually a Reddit thread that was very old. I just saw Cooper Cup and I was like, oh, what? We have news. No, it was just saying the same thing, that he had an MRI. I know. It's a bummer.
Wah, wah. All right. Well, that gives us a great opportunity then to start talking about, because listen, everybody needs to know right now. I mean, everybody's got questions. It's draft season, and we know it's draft season. This is where it all kicks into high gear right now. Like, well, I'm in the middle of like 4 drafts as is. And so let's get to, something that you guys definitely need to know as far as draft strategy and what's going on in the draft room. Let's talk about players who are falling in ADP and whether or not we're going to buy the dip. And obviously it starts with Jonathan Taylor. Now the ADP numbers that I'm going to quote right now, these are from the NFFC, because what I love about the NFFC is that, with their ADP numbers, you can set a range. Right. So you can just look at them, and I'm only looking, these ADP numbers are from like the last 10 days. So Jonathan Taylor, who, the ADP says 18.28 right now, but he's, going as low as 31 overall. Given everything that's going on here, Britt, are you willing to take, like, if you're sitting there at pick 31 overall in a 12-team league, are you going to grab yourself some Jonathan Taylor?
I think if he falls that far, then you can. But where he was going off the board is RB4. I've already said my piece that I thought he was going too high just with this new system that's being implemented in Indy. With the holdout, it makes it even worse. I do think that he's going to resolve something, either it being a trade to another team or something's going to get done with ownership. I don't think that there's any way that they put him on the NFI list and have him out for the full season, especially after Zach Moss broke his arm. The depth in that running back room is atrocious. And again, we're looking at this free agent market. They didn't bring anybody in for a visit. They signed an undrafted rookie free agent to bring in to fill out their depth. So if they were really concerned about something going awry with Taylor and his availability, I think that they would have brought somebody in. I'm willing to take him around that 30 spot, as long as I do have a little bit of discount, but RB4, absolutely not.
All right. So no at the tail end of the first round, no early second. What if we're talking about, well, late second? So it's before the 30. It's, sitting there somewhere around, pick 20 through 22, end of the second round. Would you take him there?
I still feel like that's a little too early.
Okay.
I'm not super high on Taylor with Anthony Richards' rushing ability. And I've brought it up before. When Shane Steichen was the offensive coordinator for the Chargers, Austin Eckler had this insanely good season. But if you looked at the numbers and the actual carries, the splits were almost even between him and Joshua Kelly. I think Eckler had 116 and Kelly might have had 111, something like that. Very, very close. So even if they do have Taylor, I think that Steichen's going to split some carries and not rely on a bell cow back. We kind of saw that in Philadelphia last season too. As good as Miles Sanders was, they rotated in and out of, people like Boston Scott and Kenneth Gainwell. So I don't have a lot of faith in his production this season.
All right. How about Jacobs then? We just talked about him. ADP right now, unsigned 35.95, as low as 57th overall. That's a significant drop. I mean, you're talking about That's fifth round, sixth round almost.
Yeah, Jacobs is another one that I've been low on. I think people are looking for him to repeat what he did last season, but depending on how efficient Garoppolo is, they're not going to respect that run. And I also have concerns about the experience of the offensive line. Now, that said, this ADP is plummeting and plummeting fast. I think, the draft that we're doing, I think he's still available in the fourth round. Obviously, it is super flex, but everybody has just skipped all the way over him. I
Ooh,
think I
you're on the
saw him.
clock.
Oh, I am on the
Ooh.
clock. Am I going to make a
Oh,
live
you
pick?
just went on the clock, lady. Oh, we're getting a
Well,
live pick here, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Animal Crackers League. It is a super flex 12 team. Some of the greatest friends and family here are around. And Britt, Flynn, you pick 1, 2, 3, 4. I picked sixth. Hey, and you picked ninth out of this group here. Britt Flynn, for the record, ladies and gentlemen, was the first person to not take a quarterback. She goes with Justin Jefferson with pick number 9, which I absolutely loved. I applauded you so very much for that one. Came back around. You took Dak Prescott in the second. Then, here's your boy, Anthony Richardson, in the third. So you're the only team, well, you were at that point, the only team to have taken 2 QBs. Now, here we are, and this is good for you Superflex people. So here we are in the fourth round. No third round reversal here at all. Fourth round, and all of a sudden, it's a QB run with Daniel Jones, Geno Smith, and Jared Goff. Everybody grabbing that second QB. You don't technically need that right now, Britt.
no, that's why I went ahead and took Richardson. I anticipated that QB run was going to happen, and I'm like, I'm just going to lock it up and make it happen. So I'm looking at either between Devonta Smith and Najee Harris.
Ooh.
I think that there's enough value at running back later on that I'm going to push my anchor one more round and take Devonta Smith.
Oh, she does it.
She did it.
Takes Devonta Smith.
Because that wide receiver room is nasty.
I love the pick. I mean, I do. I mean, you're gonna have to hit those running backs a little later, but like this is kind of going. The draft is going in a very intriguing way. I like that pick for you. I know that you know the player pool very, very well, so that you're going to be able to grab yourself some running backs. Because I mean, I think Tony Pollard and Jonathan Taylor, those were third round picks here. So the value's definitely being pushed down.
Yeah.
So I like this move for you. I like this journey very much for you, Britt.
Thank you. I'm happy to be on it. Thank you for including me.
Now, where am I going to go with my pick? Because I went with Lamar Jackson, then Bijan Robinson fell to me. I was going to take Travis Kelce there, to be perfectly honest, but stupid Burkus took him right in front of me like a jerk. I even said to him, like, hey, you're on the clock. Don't take my guy. I didn't even say who my guy was, but, come on. So I took Bijan Robinson, which I'm totally fine. I figured I would, if I took Saquon Barkley there, I would like suffer the wrath of both my wife and our friend Rhea, who are both diehard Giants fans. And I was expecting one of them to just kill me for that. And so in the third round, I did it, man. Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews. I've got it. There it is. There's the team up, the Marvel team up, the little mini stack.
Yeah, we typically talk about how we don't want to stack in redraft leagues, but this is one of the ones, along with Mahomes and Kelce, that just works, right? Even when Lamar Jackson, if and when he goes out, Andrews is still going to be a guy. His production isn't going to fall off like some of these other stacks that you've seen. So I love that. I also hate that for me.
Well, I'm sorry that you hate that for you. I do love that for me as well. Now the question is, I'm looking at this, right? You got Jen and Burkus are picking next. I almost guarantee that those guys are going to take a QB. I'd be surprised if they don't, but top QBs available here are Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Derek Carr. And then it starts to get a little dicey.
Yeah.
So
it gets thin quick.
I mean, I'm looking at one of those guys as potentially falling to me. And I got to be honest with you. I don't really like Wilson or Carr. That's like an option for my second QB.
Yep.
So
That's the give and take of Superflex, right? It's by the time you get down to your options are just so gross and limited. Yeah,
it
which
is.
is why I went ahead and took Richardson. I really wanted to take a different position there, but I knew that quarterback run was going to come, and I didn't think that I was going to get my guy, and I didn't want to be left with gross options.
Well, that's kind of where I was. Like, I was flip-flopping on whether or not to take Andrews, because I was like, man, if I don't take my second QB here now, I run a really strong risk of getting shut out at the at the position. So I was like, do I do that? Do I not do that? Everybody behind me, 1 through 5, they're all going to be, like, they're all looking at like garbage for their second QB. If, these next 3 QBs come off the board here, that they're going to end up with like crazy great value. They might not have that great second QB for a super flex, but they're going to end up with like some kick-ass running backs and wide receivers for sure.
Yeah, 100%. And that's why I went ahead and took Smith too. I think that the running backs are going to fall a little bit more in favor of the wide receivers. So I'm fingers crossed by the time it gets back to me, I'll reap the benefits of some of that value too.
All right. Well, we thank you all for indulging this little Superflex tangent that we were on. But listen, I think that any draft information is great information right now. If you're not learning what's going on in drafts and you're not hearing the rationale, then you're doing yourself a major disservice. You could look at draft boards all you want, but to hear like the insights as to why I'm making these picks, why Britt is making her picks, and what position she's looking at, it's valuable information. Not to say that you have to follow what we're doing, just understand what the thought process is and have those conversations with yourself in your draft. So, little words of wisdom here. Now back to players we're buying the dip on, or are we buying the dip? And I'll throw out like 3 running back names here now, because we talked Taylor, we talked Jacobs. I think we're both buying the dip on both of those guys. Well, me more on Taylor than you, but you did say you would take him if he was in that 30 range. Breece Hall, we've seen him go as low as 68. Dalvin Cook, unsigned, as low as 90. And Alvin Kamara with a potential looming suspension, as low as 108. Where do you sit with those guys? Are you in on those 3? Are you out on them?
Dalvin Cook, I definitely am. I think no matter where he signs, whether it's with Miami, whether it's with the Jets, the Patriots, even the Cowboys have been thrown into the mix, weirdly enough, because their name gets brought up all the time, everywhere. Jerry can't stand to be left out of a conversation. He's going to have value wherever he signs. With Kamara, with the looming suspension, that does concern me. Even so, I think that it's a 6-game max. And at 108, I mean, at that time, you can fill out your roster enough to kind of balance out any potential suspension. Breece Hall is where I'm honestly unsure. 1, because he's still on PUP. I know that he's been out there running. 2, because of the interest in Dalvin Cook. And then 3, because of the efficiency of running backs a year post ACL has just been they've been so much less efficient than, 2 years after the injury or the year before. And so with him, I don't know if I want to take that risk, as good of a talent as he is, in a redraft league. And I hate it because I hate passing up on talent, but that knee just really, really worries me.
Yep, me too. I won't dispute that. That's why I've been championing Dalvin Cook to go to New York. Breece Hall's the Jets' future. Treat him as such. Handle him with kid gloves to start this season. Bring in a guy like Dalvin Cook on a 1-year deal and move along from there. So, yeah, I'm good with that. I'm good with fading Breece Hall where he's going right now.
Wrap him in that ace bandage and put him on a couch next to Cup and Burrow.
Seriously.
Sit his ass down.
Kamara, you in or no?
Yes, I'm in on Kamara. I think that you get him late enough that any kind of suspension that he gets, you can build around and kind of sub in to make up for it in your draft. I mean, his talent is too good to pass up, especially as a potential pass catcher. With Jamal Williams and Kendre Miller coming in there, I don't think that he's going to be asked to run between the tackles. I think he's going to get back outside and be more of a pass catcher in that role that he really thrived in back when Mark Ingram was hanging around. So even with the suspension, I think that he can return a ton of value.
Yeah, I agree. All right, some wide receivers we're looking at possibly whether or not to buy the dip. Jahan Dotson as low as 110.6. Deontay Johnson as low as 92.9. I mean, there's definitely been an intriguing shift. Everybody knows that with the Commanders, Terry McLaurin is, obviously everybody's big favorite over there. With the Steelers, we, have learned that Deontay Johnson might be more in line of like the possession receiver with George Pickens taking the deep work. But either way, I'm digging on both of these guys. Do you have a preference?
Yeah, I think I like, Deontay Johnson over Dotson, but just barely. Johnson's target share is just so good. But on the flip side, depending on your scoring, if it's a half PPR or a standard, I think I would lean Dotson because he just has a nose for that end zone. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think Washington is going to be this prolific, high scoring offense, but we saw last season before he got hurt in his first few games. I mean, he was in there all the time. He was another one that could be included on the expletive album. Where did he come from? How did he get there? And even with Sam Howell, I think that what I've seen in camp so far with his route running and torching people is going to be a lot better in a standard or half PPR format. But Johnson's stability and floor, I like more, if that makes sense.
It definitely makes 100% sense. It really does. I'm a big Deontay Johnson fan, and I love the fact that he's falling in drafts. I really do. Because it's the mindless drones out there who are looking at last year's numbers, being like, he didn't score any touchdowns last year. I'm not going to draft him. He doesn't get any red zone looks. Buh.
Yeah,
right?
ask people how well that worked out for Miles Sanders.
I told everybody.
You can't live your life in you can't live your life in the past, but definitely not in fantasy football. It doesn't work.
Oh, wait. I got to write that down. Can you I've got to do a food for thought for the Fantasy Alarm Show. So what was it? Say that one more time.
I said you can't live your life in the past, but definitely not fantasy football.
You can't live
that's a t-shirt idea.
In the past, especially in fantasy football.
Yeah.
That's my food for thought. A spoiler alert for everybody who's going to listen to the show on Sirius later on. But
look at us live brainstorming. I love it.
I love it too. All right. So those are players who are falling in drafts that we're still intrigued by, several of them actually. And listen, I that's the funny thing also. Don't ever just be out on a player because anybody can fall. And anybody can, if they fall far enough, can return some decent value for you. So be very careful about just, of speaking in absolutes. I'm definitely not. I'm drafting him. I'm not doing it. No, don't do that. Because if he falls to you at a great price, you might as well jump in. You might as well. All right. Which then I guess this brings us to another great segment here, right? Buy the hype or forget it. I tweeted something out a little bit earlier asking who is the most overhyped players in fantasy football right now, because we're inundated with all of these, like I said earlier in the show, all of these videos of running backs who can't be tackled, of wide receivers who can't be covered, and quarterbacks with arms that cannot be contained. So the question is, do we buy the hype or are we forgetting about these guys? Because it's the hype. And I'm going to go right to you here right now. I'm coming at you with your third round pick of Anthony Richardson. Are we getting too much Richardson hype, Britt?
I don't think so. I mean, granted, it is a lot. But I think it's the right amount because today he took all the first team reps, every single one of them. He started out the beginning of the week splitting reps, and now he's already made his way all first team. I think that he's a little less developmental than what we were led to believe. And I talked about this on a Better Morning this morning on a Better Sports Network. And I think that his big arm and his athleticism it gives him a solid floor and a really decent ceiling, to be totally honest. Um, I think that he's going to do great. He's put on weight. He's up to 255. I think that his floor is Daniel Jones of last year with a ceiling of Justin Fields of last year. I know I might be totally wrong.
You're driving the bandwagon. There's nothing like who cares if you're wrong? Like, plant the flag, like the player. You're backing it up by making these picks. And listen, if he pops, great. If he doesn't pop, whatever. We got to figure out if it doesn't work. You have to dive in. You can't just be like, oh, what a shitty take. No, you got to figure out exactly what it is. And we're going to have to watch because, again, like you said earlier, Shane Steichen definitely going to be a little bit on the hot seat here with the Colts. That's something that they're going to, need to make a move here and show what they got. So, all right. So you're buying the hype on Richardson. What about Desmond Ridder? Is Desmond Ridder even getting hype? I thought those videos were more Kyle Pitts-ish than they were Desmond Ridderish.
Well, some of the popcorn headlines around the league have been focusing on him. And Arthur Blank in particular has said that he's the quarterback of the future. And so although it's not so much hype videos in the media, he's being talked about a lot. And if Better Boss is still in the chat, we know how you feel about Taylor Heineke and think that Taylor Heineke is going to overtake him. But from what I've seen from Ridder in camp, he looks really good. We saw that one pass that was thrown behind Kyle Pitts a little bit that he dropped, and everyone's like, oh, this is total crap, blah, 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 blah. But what people didn't take away from that was that was his only incompletion of the series. He went 8 for 9 on that drive, and he had another great day today. I think that he's really fitting in well with the system. He's acclimating to the playbook, and he and Bijan Robinson are roommates in camp. So we've got another best friends narrative, except it's new and improved, and it is the roommate narrative. And what a better friend for a young quarterback to have than a stud running back.
I like that because I'm totally buying in on the hype for Bijan. I'm in. I'm like, that's, and I don't even flinch taking him in the first round. When I got him in the Animal Crackers draft, I was like, yes, please give me him. I'll happily take him, as well. So, Bijan's definitely somebody I'm buying the hype in on. I'm not really, I don't love Desmond Ridder. I would very much like to see him succeed. I don't need to see Taylor Heineke out there. We know who Taylor Heineke is. We know what he's capable of doing. Does he have a good arm? Yes, of course he does. But, I'd like to see some mobility out of Ridder, something that you don't really see in Heineke. I'd like to see them run some, strong RPO in Atlanta. I think they've got the ability to do that. They've got the offensive line to do it. They've got the mobile QB, and Bijan he's a stud. He's a stud. So I'm buying that. Dude, I'm really willing to. I think Sellers is day drinking right now in our chat room because Sellers, you don't have enough room in your top 12 for all of these guys.
No,
Ridder top 12? Come on.
He's the happiest, most positive.
Year? Come on.
And then Deuce Vaughn, my favorite, top 10 running back.
Deuce Vaughn. Oh, Sellers. I just want to wrap you up and just give you a big hug, buddy. I do. I love it.
You know what? If that tells you how positive of a person he is, everybody's great. Everybody deserves a place. Everybody's wonderful. I think that speaks more to his personality than it does his analysis. Just everybody's great. Everybody deserves a spot. We're all welcome here.
We're all welcome here. 100%. Absolutely. All right. Hype machine. Yes or no? A couple of running backs I'll throw you. Jahmyr Gibbs, Alexander Madison, James Cook. Out of those three guys, who are you most likely to buy in on the hype?
The hype for Jahmyr Gibbs alone, I think, makes me lean towards him. But man, where you can still get James Cook in ADP, I'm starting to kind of come around on him a little bit. The past 2 days, he's really been involved in the passing game. He's a great rusher. I think the only thing that kept him off the field last year was his pass blocking ability, which he's apparently improved on. And if he has a role in the passing game, oh my gosh, we've already talked about how much more valuable targets are than actual carries. And if he's getting this many targets in practice and is coming down with all of these, oh my gosh, that value that you can get on him at ADP is just so juicy. Madison, we talked about. He doesn't excite me.
Yeah, Madison doesn't do it for me either. Gibbs, I just worry. I just worry that, here is an undersized guy who everybody's talking about his pass catching abilities, and everybody's talking about, him lining up in the slot and doing all of that stuff. And that's great and everything. But, what if David Montgomery shines fine in camp? He's, good between the tackles guy. He can also catch passes out in the flat. With Gibbs, I mean, am I really paying that steep of a price for a guy who could just be relegated to, being a third down pass catching back who occasionally lines up in the slot, at least until, Amon-Ra St. Brown says, guys, I need to be in the slot. That's where I excel the most. So I do worry about Gibbs there. I'm 100% with you on Madison, and I'm 100% with you on James Cook. Buffalo did a lot of work on their offensive line. Ken Dorsey wants to enhance the amount of running that they do. They want to try and ease up the burden on Josh Allen. Cook is the guy who, out of those three, that's the guy who I'm investing more in. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think the return on ADP gives him, a much better ROI. And with Gibbs, I will say this one thing. I know John brought it up in the Quick Out podcast, and it is true. We hear about these running backs lining up in the slot all the time in the offseason. And then when it comes down to the actual game, what do? They're in the backfield. But the problem with Detroit, and why I think that this narrative might actually come true, is just the blatant lack of pass catching options that they actually have in their offense right now. With everybody suspended, with everybody who got injured, everybody who they cut, I think that Gibbs might actually, just out of necessity, have to be on the field and line up and run routes.
Oh, man. Khalif Raymond's mom watches this show. Come on, Britt. You got to say something nice about Khalif Raymond.
I'm going to have a whole haters club, like a whole mom haters club. By the start of the season, I'm going to have, they're going to be on the Nextdoor app talking about me. Just everything.
The Nextdoor app. Can we talk about the Nextdoor app for a moment here? That is the biggest piece of trash app ever. It's, just for crotchety old people just pissing and moaning about the neighborhood. I'm sorry that this town isn't the same as it was in the 60s.
Oh my gosh.
Guess what?
Again, the overarching theme of this entire show, you can't live in the past. Things have changed. This is not the 80s. It's not the 60s. Things have changed.
That's the standard line in my house. Cause listen, I'm a sarcastic guy. Always have been. And Deb has grown accustomed to it and fights back with it. As soon as one of us complains about anything, the other's immediately like, why don't you go type that onto Nextdoor and see what happens? Because we know just how bad that's going to end up being. Oh, geez. Right? My wife comes home. She's like, God, that traffic and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, yeah, why don't you go put that on Nextdoor and see what they have to say about it?
Oh, my gosh. See, you guys are big enough that y'all have a Nextdoor app. I don't have it. We just act like the guy from Home Improvement and peek over the fence when we need to communicate. Yeah, we just need to communicate over the fence that way. So thankfully, no Nextdoor app for me, because I don't think that I could handle it.
Well,
I
because, for next door, for the neighborhood, you're talking about the entire state of Arkansas.
basically, yes.
All right. Hyped up wide receivers. Which way do we go? Which way do we go? Calvin the Toe Ridley, Elijah Mr. Slot Receiver Moore, or Brandon Don't Call Me Debo Ayuk.
So this is really hard for me because I'm so high on all three of these guys. The Calvin Ridley argument against him not being good this season is, well, he's taken 2 years off from football. I get that. There is some rust, but from what we've seen in OTAs and in camp, this guy is ripped. He's fast. He's got very quick hands. His routes are so crisp. I love what I'm seeing out of Ridley, especially in this Jacksonville offense. With Moore, I really don't know what to make of him. I want to make him a thing, but on Twitter, when we posed this question, somebody said it pretty plainly. We're all hyping him up when we really haven't seen him do anything in the NFL in 2 years, aside from that small sample size of a few weeks in his rookie season. So as much as I want him to succeed, I don't know. With Brandon Ayuk, he's actually started surpassing Debo in drafts. For me, that hype is getting out of control, insane. I love the player. Don't think that I can do the ADP if he starts going above Debo. So out of these three that I feel most confident with, it's got to be Ridley.
Yeah, I'm more confident in Ridley as well, but yeah, I love Moore and I love Ayuk. I think, and yeah, that's the great thing is that, I'm looking at, especially when I go RB heavy in a draft early, I get like, you wrote the article in the draft guide, the Anchor RB article. And you guys should definitely check that out. fantasyalarm.com/draft guide. Make sure you get a copy of that. But what happened? So when I go with like anchor, I go anchor wide receiver basically. So
Mhm.
I take a guy who is, with like, maybe it's my third pick or my fourth pick that I feel confident with, and I get a strong wide receiver and I anchor that. And then Ayuk always seems to end up being my wide receiver too. And I'm like, this guy has the potential of being the wide receiver one in San Francisco. So I'm happily taking him as my number two.
He's so good at separating. People don't realize how good he is. And from what I've heard in camp, he's gotten even better since last year. The sticking point for me is if that ADP rises to above Debo, because that offense is a little bit spread out. And I think that Brock Purdy is a little bit of a game manager guy. So that's the
Yeah.
only thing for me on Ayuk. But yeah, Sellers, you can tell he listens to me. That's half his best ball stack.
Right. I'm seeing we just have a neighborhood group text thread.
Yeah. Well, there's our street, there's only like 5 houses. So yeah, we'll go out. We rotate porches where we're gonna go like have an afternoon bevy.
Oh, I like that. I like that. I definitely do. Well, all right, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate you guys joining us. Again, if you're on YouTube, before you leave, smash that like and subscribe button. Get involved here with the family. Go to fantasyalarm.com/draft guide. Join up. Draft guide, cheat sheet, all pro subscription. Hang out with us in Discord. It's going to be an absolute blast. We got the fantasy football game show with Front Yard Fantasy. That's what's coming up next. So for Britt Flynn, I'm Howard Bender. Big thanks to our producer, Ernie Acosta. We'll catch you next time.